Hey everybody, welcome to Design Systems Workshop. As you all know, I'm Jermid, Design System Lead, and I'm going to start today with looking at the libraries, the structure of the design system. Questions like why you guys have view access only, and there's editing access for design system team, using the assets panel, loading libraries, loading styles, and we'll have a look at the multi-tiered systems, combining Zellers and the Bay together in one system. Okay, so on my screen, you see here in front of you, this is the design system as it is today. You'll see two new additions of Zellers components and styles. So we have Zellers components and styles, the Bay components and styles. Then we have an icons library, we have a desktop patterns library, and a mobile patterns library. Mobile patterns library, as you guys all know, has that's been kind of pushed out to another future reality. So we're focusing on desktop. So the structure is pretty much like this. You have, in this kind of multi-tiered system, you have the styles contain all your what we call stylistic attributes. And these things you can tokenize. And I can talk a little bit about that. Tokens are a very interesting concept. But basically, the components are all of your components, right? An encapsulated functional piece of your design. And all of these encapsulated functional pieces of your design are combined to create what we call user interface patterns. And in this case, we're looking at the desktop responsive web UI patterns. So the components pull the styles, and so then you're starting to create a system. Systems are relationship of parts. So once you start to make those connections and those relationships, you have this possibility of a cascade. So any change that you make, there's a possibility of it cascading right down through your system. So two things that promotes consistency and it promotes speed. So in this case, we have both Zellers and the Bay, which have individually their own component libraries and their own style libraries that actually combine in the end in your desktop pattern UI. So if I look inside the desktop pattern UI library, you'll see this is the storefront homepage. So you can see you have side by side, you have the Bay and Zellers. So the object here is to see both businesses side by side, because we're a unified team now working on both the Bay and Zellers. This is storefront. Naturally, this will be the same structure we follow for all the other pages. So you'll see in the left-hand side in these templates for products, orders and returns, cart and checkout, you'll see a similar layout with the breakpoints. So if I zoom in here, you will see the Bay. This is the storefront template, and the breakpoint is extra large, 1440, and same this is Zellers. So we'll have these little tags above so you can recognize them. It's pretty obvious on the storefront, but when you get into certain other sections, it's less obvious. The cart and checkout being one, because I believe Zellers uses the very same template as the Bay for the checkout experience. But having them side by side like this as well gives us an opportunity to actually craft the experiences differently as well as being consistent and sharing artifacts and assets between. It also gives us the opportunity to be different where we need to be and to see them side by side. So that's the objective here with this combined UI pattern library. And the beautiful thing is as well, because they're independent libraries, it's not possible unless you deliberately do it to introduce a component into the Bay that's actually in Zellers, or introduce it into Zellers that's actually in the Bay, because they're separate libraries. And we did it purposely like that, so you know exactly what library you're on at any time. Same with the styles. There's no way to get confused with styles. And I'll show you what that looks like now in a second. So if I jump into, say, how does it work on your day-to-day in your life, like working with these libraries? Well, like I said, this is kind of how it works, the combinations of styles and components to create the UI patterns. I'm in here, like this is say I go to a new page. This is your guys' project. You're starting a new design. So of course, you're accessing your assets panel all the time here. Inside your assets panel, you have your library icon here. These are your team libraries, as you see when you hover over. Team libraries, this is where all the kind of magic happens with shared assets that we call team libraries. You can see in all of your lists of files, libraries, because libraries, you can create anything as a library and share anything as a library once it's published. And you can see here, I put a little green dot beside those that are design system libraries. And you can see the heading here as well, design system libraries. I'll turn them all off so you see how it works inside the assets panel. In this case, I guess, you know, you're going to have to switch on. I would suggest switching on all the libraries. Now you'll definitely need your icons. Now you'll notice I changed the names as well. This was originally called TBDS icons, the Bay Design System icons. Now that we're combining both together, and the company is Hudson's Bay Company, we have HBC icons. So this includes Zellers and the Bay. So I'll knock this on. You'll see in your assets panel, now it populates in here. So you have a category for Zellers here. These are the Zellers icons we're using presently. And you will see common, because these are the common icons. The Bay, it originated with the Bay, so it's still called common. There's debate whether we should name this to the Bay icons, but the complexity here is that Zellers uses some icons from the Bay already. And because Zellers adopted the icons from Everyday. Everyday is no more, but Everyday adopted the icons from the Bay. So we'll have to kind of understand that as we go.
Yeah, but it's okay.
Anybody else have a question? So yeah, if we look at these icons here, you have everything in here. So you have your Bootstrap icons brand, you have your common cursors, external logos, illustrative. These illustrative icons are the Bay right now. There is a lot for Zellers, and you'll see some illustrative icons in Zellers, but we need to pull these out eventually. These are the only ones we have right now, but there are many more. These are called stickers for Zellers. And same, okay, we're going to switch on some of the other libraries. So say HBC icons, say I'm working on the Bay today. I'll switch on the Bay. Actually, I'm going to switch them all on because I will see the Zellers components in the desktop UI pattern anyway. So we switch on these, switch on Zellers components, switch on styles. Okay, so now they're active. You know they're active by, well, first of all, you've toggled them on here, but also in your assets panel. I'd love seeing the assets panel being populated. It just gives me great excitement here. So icons, I see my Bay components, say. So you drill open. You'll notice that your little icon here, the diamond. So these are components, right? The one without, these are templates. And we're going to look at templates and why they're set up the way they are in 1 second. If you turn on the style components, now remember, everything you see in the assets panel is a component. So you're like, well, I thought a component was an encapsulated piece of design, the most functional, basic piece of design, like a button or an input. Yes, absolutely. That's the true meaning of a component. But in order to serve anything out of this assets panel, it needs to be a component. So we have this concept of what I call package components. Now, package component is a big component. It's using the concept of components just in a way to deliver the template to you. So you need to break that component apart to use it. I'll show you what that looks like in a second. So what I'm going to do is I've switched on my libraries here. If you switch on the styles library, there are no components in styles. There actually, I lie, there's one. So you'll see an actual swatch of all your styles. But the styles library, really, you access it from the right-hand side, from the styles panel. And we'll have a look at that in a second. So I'll switch on styles. You won't see much activity in the assets panel. You'll see, this swatch. That's the only component in there. Layout grid, and eventually it'll be one for typography as well. But you can pull these out and have a look at if you want to examine the layout grids, if you want to examine the swatches that we have, at least they're there for you to have a look at without opening, directly from the assets panel, without opening the desktop pattern library. But if I switch on this guy, the base styles, I will have them they'll be accessible in the right-hand panel, and I'll show you that now. So if I just draw any shape here at all, So in the right-hand panel, under the 4 dots here, these are your libraries under my fill. Now I have the base styles. And if I scroll down, if I activated it, I'll have Zeller styles as well. And right now I've actually left the neutrals the same for Bay and Zellers. Because we still have to go through the neutrals and try and sort out what we're extracting. There's too many neutrals, the grays. There's too many in there at the moment. So in here, you can actually just type in, say I want the Zellers red, I'll just type in Zellers. So I have the Zellers red, Zellers black. You'll see it's set up exactly as it is in the brand system. You have brand primary, brand secondary. So there's 2 reds for Zellers. There's a primary and a secondary, and the same here. So you'll see, even though they're both named Zellers, you'll see one is in the category brand secondary and one is in the category brand primary. So you have access to all of the colors in here. And all the you have these promotional colors as well. And we'll have a look at that now in a second within the actual library, how they live in the styles library. But these templates is what I want to show you. So like I said, the assets panel is only where you access components. It has to be component in here. But we thought, okay, well, how do we get the templates in here? So to get the templates in here, you have to create a component of the template. And it's a big ass component, right? So if I look in here and I look at the storefront, this is the entire template for the storefront, captured as a component. So you'll see a big red warning sign here that this is a component, because a component is an encapsulated piece of information. So what do I mean by that? Well, a button, if you look at the button, it's kind of the basic essence. Both these things are components, but you can see how much more complex the template is as a component compared to the button, right? But they're both components. The button, of course, you don't have to break apart because it's encapsulated. In other words, it has all its functionality. You can, click on the button, you can turn on whether there's a loader in there, you can turn on the size, you can change the hover states. If it has buttons or icons on the left, right, both, none. But here, there's a hell of a lot of complexity in here. So what you got to do with the template is the first thing you got to do is detach it, and then it creates it as an auto layout frame. And that's far more useful for you because then you can play with it. But remember, everything in here is a component. So the first thing you got to do with we call a package template. That's why I have this little package icon down here at the bottom. Detach this component before use. When you detach it, you'll see also in the layers panel that it actually has this little delete me please. That's that red block. So get rid of that red block straight away. Delete me please. Now this is not a layout frame. You know that by looking at the assets panel, you see the storefront is complete frame, auto layout frame. And then everything in here is assets. So I have my global footer. This is a component. I know if I click on in the right-hand panel, I can see the go to main component. If I click on that, it takes me back into the components library for the bay. So that's the bay footer. And I'll see my component in there. And the beauty of this now is you can set that to vertical stack, right? If it's, you have options then within the actual component to make changes. So that's the concept behind package templates. They're just a way to get the templates into your design file. So fast kind of access to something you're working on. So say it's could be storefront there, but it could be one of the products, say product pages. You have the detail page. Again, you just detach it first. Just get rid of that red block at the bottom. You don't need it. But now once it's detached, you have all kinds of functionality in here. It's important with the assets panel as well. There's a lot of functionality with respect to what we call properties in Figma. And you really kind of have to drill in without any annotation here. And a side note, that's something I need to work on, is how to annotate all these things for you guys to let you know what properties are available in what, because you can't tell by just looking at the template, right? I have to kind of drill into things. and always keep an eye on the right-hand side. So drill in here. I'm looking at where it says auto layout here. Okay, there's no properties here. Keep drilling in. So I'm trying to find what I can change in here, like what properties I can change. Right, I see one here. There is in this component called shipping options. There's toggles in here for different things. So I can turn things off. I can change the message in here. So these are the kind of things to look out for. Drill into objects so you can see what you can change. Here's an accordion. There's a lot of things you can change in here, whether it's open or closed. Just so keep it. What I'm saying is keep an eye on these properties because these have all been built out in the design system to help with you with the functionality of this. Accordion is an interesting one because the accordion contains information, right? So you can see it's open here in this case, it's closed in this case. So they all look pretty much the same when they're closed, but we don't really know what's inside. Like you can see below returns, that's an accordion as well. It has the very different information from details. So we bring in this concept called slot components. And basically what a slot component is, you can see in here that once I open at the bottom here where it says title, this is a slot component. So I can swap out this title for something else. I could have a shopping bag total, maybe. It allows me to swap in different content in a placeholder. So I have a placeholder for the title of the accordion because the different accordions actually have different titles. You see here, this one has like links, and it has the total cost here on the right. The generic title is different again. It just has a title. And the same with the actual body, but you won't see the body because it's closed, right? So again, you have to, when you toggle on things here, other things happen. So I'm going to open the accordion. Now I have two more options down here. Okay, this is interesting. So I can toggle on the body, on or off. But in content here is another slot component. It's like you're slotting in. It's an area reserved for you to pull out and push in information. And in here, within this slot component, you have different preferred. You can set preferred components to swap in and out in your accordion as well. So it helps direct the designer as well to what information you can pull in and out of this accordion. And this is good to point out because you guys, as you're building out, working on projects, you might see more preferred content that you should flag then for the design system to say, hey, you know, I was working on an accordion. I saw a use case for this content. I've designed it. Can you put that into your design system under the preferred block? So then every other designer has that content that you designed available to them when they're using the accordion as well. So in this case, you can swap out the description. There's checkboxes. You know, there's different kind of objects you can have in here to swap out. So again, and all these are interactive as well. So like you say, drill in, you know, you'll see you have checked, unchecked, mixed, states, focus state. So always drill in to these objects to see what other, you know, because I'd say the rule of thumb is if you see this, you say, oh, I wish this was checked. Okay, well then drill in and double click in and just see if there are more options. And you see there are. Once you drill in, keep an eye on the right-hand panel. Okay, so that's your checked. Then you take off the label with or without. So this is templates. Well, I'll stop and just ask, anyone have any questions at this point? Anything confusing?